Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of Social Connectedness Conversation. The aim of this conversation is connect people in all walks of life, and I wanted to introduce my first guest and how we got socially connected. So, Allison, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So, my name is Allison Yamamoto, but I also go by Allie. And Dr. Ashley and I met through the Columbia Club of Northern California. Both of us were board members, so that's how we got socially connected. And I'm just so honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know the truth is that I sometimes feel like I am behind in times when I'm using social media to build my professional network. And one of the reasons why I ended up in social media after avoiding it like a plague, it's probably not the best term nowadays with the pandemic, COVID pandemic going on, is the fact that because of the COVID pandemic, I realized I really had to get onto social media and connect with people. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions that I'm sure most of us are curious about, especially ones who, the generation that did not grow up with social media and we're trying to navigate ourselves through social media, and those of you who actually are digital natives. Still, there are questions. So let me ask you some questions and see how do you best use social media, especially like LinkedIn, to build your brand and your presence, Allie?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And don't worry, for those of you who might have some reservations towards it, um, totally normal. I know that pandemic and just like a lot of the workplace culture has shifted, but this is a really great opportunity for folks to figure out how they want to leverage social media to really enhance their existing professional brand, and just build that in a virtual sense too. So, as someone who works at LinkedIn, we definitely have seen a lot of activity happen over the course of the past 2 years. And it's been really wonderful to see how folks are leveraging this virtual space to network, to meet people outside of their existing bubbles, and to just start a conversation. That's really what the core of LinkedIn is that community component. So having folks who build their profiles and then proactively do their research, LinkedIn is really good for that, for folks to find and like build an understanding of what else exists out there, because sometimes it can be really difficult and challenging. But I think having a virtual presence, whether it's LinkedIn or other places on social media, helps to at least start open those doors.
Definitely. And I know for me, I started Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and probably Instagram. And I don't know, I just felt a little bit more comfortable in LinkedIn just because I've been a professional for so many years and trying to maybe connect to people that I've met at conferences or collaborated with over the years. It was easier for me to reach out to them and talk about work than, let's say, like Facebook, where I don't know, so, um,
Mhm.
so I wanted to move on to a question about the secret sauce of finding the right people and maybe companies to connect with. Do you have some advice on doing that?
Yeah, so I think it really begins with knowing what you're in it for, is kind of what we talk about here at LinkedIn. Is are you in it for, what kind of grounds you in the work that you do and what you want to achieve? And the great thing about us as a platform is you can do the research to find those folks. So whether you're super passionate about public health and want to figure out connecting with great professionals like Dr. Ashley, or whether you're interested in research and want to find a lab that is passionate about the area of research that you too are interested in, LinkedIn has a really great just overall resource of folks who publish content on LinkedIn, who share their research papers, who post about the great things that are happening at their organizations. And you'd be very surprised with how simple it is, whether it's through your newsfeed or doing a little bit of research on LinkedIn of how easily you can find and start to follow those leaders within those spaces and get connected to some really cool resources.
That is so true, Allie. I've found a lot of resources, definitely just going through that search and finding who's out there. I guess what I struggle with is the kind of content that will get you noticed, because I kind of struggle with what to post, what do I need to do, and is this good enough, or is this relevant, etc. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And again, it anchors on what you want your professional brand to be. Within LinkedIn, there's so many different formats that you can pursue. You can do a long form, kind of almost like a blog post. You could do short form, which is just like a status update, almost, if you will. Or you could do like personal in mails, personal messages with folks too. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can take. And it really depends on what you are most comfortable with. If you do prefer more of that one-to-one interaction, maybe, in-mail content or like messaging someone on LinkedIn is the path for you. If you are comfortable sharing an update, whether it's a celebration, a big milestone in your career, uh, we love to celebrate our community and our members. So just posting that and sharing that with the community is also a great way to kind of notify your network and get noticed as well for the accomplishments in your career journey. And then, I also mentioned the blog post. That's a great place if you did have, something that you wanted to share, maybe research or, some experiences or 5 tips for professional networking. You could absolutely publish a LinkedIn blog as content for you to share with not just your network, but the greater community of LinkedIn.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I have to ask you a basic question in terms
Yeah.
of a blog. What's considered, like,
Mhm.
what's a typical length of a blog?
You know, it's a really good question. And I wish that I had kind of more clarity on that, to be honest. But unfortunately, I do not. So I don't want to say anything that's, erroneous.
No, not a problem. And that's one of the questions that I struggle with. And of course, like anything, it ranges from one end to another. So I've noticed some really great content on LinkedIn in a blog post, and some of them are quite short. Some of them are quite long with like beautiful pictures. So no worries. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in terms of the next question, I do a great job of offering help to people, but this is what I struggle with: how to ask for and then receive, like, help with your promotion, job search, business goals, collaboration on a grant, or connection with other sectors where, like, you're not in the sector but you're really curious about. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you mentioned something that's really impactful, which is curiosity, often is a really great starting point for people. And I think one thing about LinkedIn and what I've noticed personally is when people reach out, I'm always really excited. People love to help other people out. And so if you're able to help others, of course, like there's a lot of excitement. So very easy to just, message someone on LinkedIn, ask for a little bit of insight. Feedback is always really important too. So even if it's not in on LinkedIn, but say it's like in an office environment or in your workplace, getting some feedback from folks, whether formal feedback or informal, to get more clarity about how you can better position yourself for those promotions or to further your kind of career aspirations too. So I think a lot of it is maintaining that curiosity for personal development, but communication, I think that's a key part of it too, is making sure to clearly communicate with folks about what sort of feedback would be impactful for you to receive.
Definitely. And you mentioned about sending an inbox mail, or I saw that there's other options to kind of reach out where you comment on some of their posts, or
Yeah.
even forward or repost what they have posted. Is that another way to connect with your connection initially? If you're afraid to maybe send out that personal email of in the inbox for help.
Definitely. I think that you bring up a really good point. And there's actually a LinkedIn learning course by Dory Clark, who's a professor at Columbia University Business School. And in that course, there's a whole section about how to create like a warm understanding of people that you may have not met in person before, right? So, great options of like commenting or liking or sharing content that's being produced by these individuals shows that you're engaging. And I think engagement is really key part of just building and cultivating an understanding of what this person has to say and like how that is valuable to you. And so it helps to kind of create that connection or draw those dots a little bit clearer. So those are great points.
No, wonderful. I actually met Dory Clark last year because she has her she has her book out on long games, I believe. Yeah, so and then plus Columbia affiliation and connection, right? So awesome. And the this is a really great follow up question, which is how often and when should you post if you do decide to maybe post something or blog? There's also a feature called newsletter that is available for a few folks. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, so you're totally right in that there's a lot of options, newsletters being like maybe a consistent way on like a monthly cadence of updating your network. And it depends on where you are in your career journey and what kind of impact you want to have. If it is to, provide resources and like share experiences, we do have members who post, every day, sometimes even multiple times a day. But it really kind of depends again on like what you want to achieve. Is it like you sharing your experience? Is it like receiving feedback, having questions, or like, receiving responses? Um, I would say that like there's no specific number in terms of you need to post X amount of times in order to achieve Y, but having like a healthy kind of like not schedule per se, but like continuously connecting with your audience, whether it's you engaging with their posts or it's you posting, on a monthly, quarterly basis. That helps your network stay on top of all the great things that I'm sure you're accomplishing to help them just build that awareness. Mhm.
Wow, no, those are really useful. And how do you use the communities that you've built to encourage the growth in yourself as well as the company that you're working for or hope to work for in the future?
Yeah, so that's a really good point about community. And I think one way that I personally leveraged in my own career is the groups on LinkedIn. Those have been just a wealth of knowledge for me personally as I kind of explored, different career options or wanted to hear different insights from folks. Joining groups on LinkedIn are a great way to gain access to some really important knowledge or resources that folks are willing to share in those spaces. So you can find groups for almost everything that you're interested in. They exist, and it's almost like a little community where you can, just learn a little bit more about what exists outside of your current world. So, highly encourage leveraging that. We actually, even with our own Columbia Club, we have our group where we share events and share job opportunities. So, yeah. Mhm.
That's wonderful. And another question that I had was
Mhm.
probably like what kind of a modality? Meaning, is it better? Like, I've seen a lot of video contents that are coming out in LinkedIn and other platforms versus
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
audio or words or a combination of both. I mean, is there one way, or should we be investing in, ways to communicate better in different mediums?
Yeah, I think it's all about diversifying the communication channels, right? So it's, you can produce video content if that's a skill that you have or a skill that you even want to cultivate. We're starting to see more and more video content emerge onto LinkedIn's platform. It's a great way of, you know, folks are on the move these days. So sometimes having like a motion picture or, you know, video content is a great way to kind of capture an audience or capture attention. So great that you noticed that. It is definitely becoming a growing trend. But it's ultimately what your strengths are and like what you're comfortable with too, right? So if folks, myself included, can sometimes be camera shy, you know,
Me too.
sometimes maybe just writing out or posting is equally valuable. It's all about the skills that you have or that you want to leverage or learn.
Definitely. No, thank you so much. And do you have any other maybe advice in terms of who, like people who are just starting out or coming back into maybe trying out social media either for the first time or trying to learn some of these skills? Do you have some maybe basic steps to get out of this fear and anxiety of getting into social media and saying the right stuff? Because I know mentally I understand exactly what you're talking about, like adding value, know your brand, strategize and figure it out. But when you sit down and actually do it, it gets really daunting because I know what I want to lecture in my class and be able to do it pretty well, but to do it on social media, my mind sometimes goes blank. So, yeah. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, such a great point. Like, it's a different space, right? From being in a lecture hall environment. It's you know, it's what is it, Web two? I'm not even sure, like Web one, Web two, but it's all about content creation and but also engagement on LinkedIn.com. So a lot of conversations do take place. I would say that while it might seem very daunting to initiate conversation, um, the great thing is that people love to share or help each other. I think that's been a foundational part of what makes LinkedIn a little bit different than some other platforms. Is it's really aimed around that concept of building your professional network or like helping to cultivate and elevate your, you know, your careers. So people know that people tend to have positive intentions of helping each other out. So, you know, clarity is really important when you are reaching out to people to initiate that conversation. But kindness, I think that's another thing that we try to emphasize a lot is being kind, being like genuine about why you're curious to connect and expressing those early on help people just really cultivate yeah, that virtual community.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's so important to have both the in person community as well as the virtual community. And
Yeah.
then, of course, that Venn diagram where the in person and the virtual community
Yeah.
actually coincide.
Mhm.
So I think that's really wonderful to build that community collaboration and
Mhm.
also being able to connect and be curious about similar things and various different things to build a wonderful community and collaboration together. So I
No,
know.
no.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say that's so true. It's not meant to replace social interactions by any means. Like this is meant to enhance interaction. So, for example, like if you do have a chance to meet someone that like you just want to stay connected with, that like in person, you can absolutely mention like, hey, like, would you be comfortable connecting with me on LinkedIn? And then just quickly add each other there and then continue that relationship forward, you know, because you're totally right in that connection can happen in real life, still happens. And then LinkedIn can help kind of be complementary to that process too. Mhm.
Yeah, no, definitely. I did the I attended my first hybrid conference last year for AP American Public Health Association meeting in Denver, and so some of us were in person, some of us were virtual, and what was really great about it was the fact that we were able to kind of exchange information via social media, especially LinkedIn, afterwards saying, hey, here's my email address, here's my, like a business card, plus a way to connect during the conference. So that was really wonderful. It was a nice enhancement. And I know there's a school of thought where it's like, oh, we can't really connect, virtually, etc. But I think you're right, Allie. It really enhances and also allows us to connect, especially since we're so mobile. And if you live in New York or California or even Europe, Asia, etc., you can still connect after the meeting and also throughout your career to be connected. Because I think for me, before social media and all this email presence came about, it's hard for me to connect with people that I've been friends with or collaborated, my mentors from like 20, 25 years ago, even at Columbia, just because they have email addresses, but they may not be there anymore. They may
Right.
be at another university or whatever. So it's been a interesting adventure to kind of track some of the folks down, and hopefully I can get some of them to get on social media so we can connect and continue the conversation. So
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so this
That's
is
so
wonderful.
true. Because even just speaking with my classmates from college, like some of us have changed phone numbers. Like there's so many things that might change over the course of time, but being able to have like a network that you could still tap into regardless of those changes still is feasible. You know, LinkedIn, it stays with you. So, mhm.
That's so true. And then for me, I'm also active duty military spouse for the past, oh my gosh, 2 decades. And this has been such a wonderful resource because you can, like what you mentioned about groups, sometimes it's hard to find groups that represent, because your identity is not just one. Of course, I'm a foremost public health professional. I feel passionate about what I do, but also as a mother, as a active duty military spouse, as multiple different things, with different hobbies, you can find different groups, which is really wonderful to kind of have that conversation in like a professional level as well as a personal level where there's that connection and adding value to the world, hopefully, right? So or your community. So
Definitely. That's a good point about how we could be part of many communities, right? We're not just a singular person. We're not just like one version of ourselves. We have many facets. And I think you're totally right. And groups help you tap into the multifaceted nature of yourself too.
yeah, and another thing that I know comes up is the fact that you are in a profession for a long time and then you hit a certain point in your life and you're like, ooh, I want to reinvent myself and, explore a different career. And I think it makes it easier to explore what's out there because I think it was harder in the past because you wanted to leap, but you don't know where you're leaping into. So,
Definitely. So many unknowns with career transitions still today, but at least in some form, there's a community where you can ask questions and kind of cultivate that curiosity, like you're talking about. Because yeah, there's career transitions are challenging, but on LinkedIn you can see that narrative happen a lot more frequently than you might assume. So you're totally right in that, yeah, career transitions can be a difficult thing to navigate, but there's people who are willing to share their stories and kind of help guide along the way.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to, Ali, are you able to check LinkedIn to see if there are any comments or I'm trying to, I don't,
Ooh,
I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure.
how that,
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm
yeah.
not able to see an update for any comment section.
Yeah, me too. I don't see it either. So, huh. But if there are other questions or comments for this session. Now, will we probably be able to see it? It's our first step. I am so excited just because I've been wanting to do this for such a long time. But like what
Mhm.
Ali, you mentioned, although I lecture a couple times a week in front of many people, but just being
Mhm.
on social media always hindered me from actually doing this kind of conversation. I enjoy networking and also talking with people in person, online, hybrid format. But I think just having this opportunity, I'm so grateful that we had an opportunity to actually meet through Columbia Alumni Association group, and also you happen to work and
Mhm.
be really successful in LinkedIn in terms of moving up in your career as well. So, yeah, so just going back to, I guess, our five tips. I would like to just review our conversation just to summarize. Is
Mhm.
so I think the first one that you and I think agreed on was curiosity, right? Correct?
Yeah. So important.
Yeah, and then the second one was connection and right how we're able to build community connection, etc. And then the third one, you did a really you explained this so well with clarity, communication.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I think oftentimes with communication, um, yeah, just being clear is being kind is what we preach. So
yeah, and it's also compassionate too. I think people do want to hear the truth, but I think the way you couch it and the timing is also very important. Like, what do they really want to hear? But I love the fact that you talked about kindness, and that is definitely communication. And then the collaboration that we are doing right now in terms of getting this information out there, because I know I am not alone. I've probably had many conversations with my colleagues in various different walks of life about how much they want to use social media and they're not quite sure how to utilize it except to probably post, their family pictures of their vacations. So, and then lastly, we talked about gratitude.
Mhm.
So that's what a blessing to have this opportunity to sit with you and actually talk about this, how to actually connect and build a community and add value to the community that we serve, and also other communities that we may be touching upon. So, I do have my last question to you. What are some interesting projects or that you're working on in the next couple of weeks or next month?
Oh, thanks for asking. Great question. So at LinkedIn, I recently joined our employee resource group called the LinkedIn Asian Alliance. We call ourselves LEAH for short because love, abbreviations. So with LEAH, I've taken on the role of global allyship lead. And we're programming a lot of exciting things for May, which happens to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So, with May around the corner, we're just getting our gears in line as an employee resource group to put on some cool events to help celebrate the unique identities that exist, also acknowledge like the intersectionality that also exists. So we're really thrilled to have some, yeah, panel discussions and just cool events in the near future. So yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And May is Asian American Heritage Month, so that's wonderful. I will have to probably reach out and find out all the great things that you're doing.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for joining me and having this first social connectedness conversation to get people connected. And I will see you again in other meetings and also in person
Yeah.
events, hopefully. And we'll do this again. Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me here, Dr. Ashley. And, I just also want to say that you have always been so kind and so generous with your community. So I'm really excited for your journey with LinkedIn Live.
Thank you so much.